tefillin, which has the holy parashas in, then he says you would fast for those also maybe, but not just if you see them falling. Menachem and Josh. Okay.
And what happens if you see a shoe band?
That he doesn't say. That isn't a basis for fasting. I don't know. You didn't see the Torah. Look, with these things, it's not number one. It's not a precise science, and number two, it's not so compulsory. Yeah. Okay. Next one. The next halacha. So if somebody fasts on Shabbos, he says Aneinu at the end of his prayer. So that's, if you know, from fasting during the week. I'm not saying the regular fast, like extra voluntary fast. There's a prayer, it's in the art scroll, at the end of Mincha. A whole Aneinu, so you've got the Aneinu there as well, but you don't say a brocha at the, I beg your pardon, it's the Aneinu that we do on a regular fast day. That's Aneinu, but you don't say the brocha of the Aneinu, and you say that whole section in Elokai Neshama. Okay. Next halacha, if eating early on Shabbos is an oneg for you, then eat early. And if eating later is an oneg for you, then eat later. In other words, remember, most of the time their shuls were early, even on Shabbos. Got shul at 6:30, so you finish shul by 8:30. So you come home. Now the question is, 8:30. Maybe the guy's not really hungry; just had a big meal the night before. So some people say, look, 9 o'clock, I'd like my Shabbos meal already. Some people say, you know what, let's relax a bit, let's rest a little, we'll have it later. I'll tell you where it comes up for me and my family if we're having just a family lunch. So sometimes we'll come home and we say, look, we ate at the bracha. We're not really hungry, we can eat an hour or two from now. So is that acceptable or not? So Shulchan says, sure. You want to eat early, you prefer that, eat early. You prefer eating late, eat late. Whatever works better for you.
Eating already, that's the...
Yeah. And he says, however, if somebody has like a lavish lunch every day at the same time, every day you've got this beautiful, delicious 3-course meal for lunch at 2 o'clock. So then on Shabbos, even though you're also having a beautiful, delicious, lavish, don't have it at 2 o'clock. Have it earlier or have it later, so that you know for yourself that there's something different and something special about Shabbos. Next halacha, number 8, don't fast because of any trouble. So even though we're fasting for, there's bad dreams and that kind of thing, that's only for that. Not because somebody's worried about their finances or their health or whatever else. They don't fast for that on Shabbos. We don't cry out on Shabbos, and we don't blow the shofar or anything like that. The only thing is, if there's a famine, people don't have food, we shout verbally on Shabbat. In other words, we ask Hashem, please help us, but we don't blow the shofar. So too, if a city was under siege from an enemy combative force, or there was a flood, right, or all things like that, a ship is in trouble in the sea, even an individual who's being chased by bandits or anything like that, in those cases, you can cry out and ask Hashem to help, but still, you don't blow the shofar. The only exception would be if you're blowing the shofar to rally the troops together, or to rally people together to come and fight against an attack. So let's say you've got a place in Israel where you're in a moshav, right, and you've got, God forbid, a terrorist attack or something, so they want to set off an alarm, right, to get everyone together, or there's a rocket coming in, so you want to set off the alarm, so people will go to the bomb shelters. So you would do that kind of thing on Shabbos as well, but otherwise we never blow the shofar, but in desperate situations we do indeed turn to Hashem. Yes, Yoda?
What about a drought?
So he doesn't bring a drought. He speaks about mezonot, if there's no food. Doesn't speak about calling out for a drought on Shabbos.
So a drought would lead to war.
A drought would lead to, so let's get to the would lead to, Yeah. Judge.
For the bomb, in Israel, should you rather blow shofar as a siren or set the electric alarm?
Whatever will be more effective in getting people to safety.
What happens if you tries to blow the shofar and then for some reason you can't?
I don't think we need to worry about that in a halacha shiur. Okay, next halacha. When it says that, another example would be that you can cry out to Hashem. He says if somebody has a ruach ra, somebody has a bad spirit, and basically what that means, he says, any time that somebody's in danger, and what we would probably call this, from the Mishna Brura's explanation, we'd probably call this a kind of a suicidal depression, where somebody really gets into such a state, such a psychological, emotional, mental state, that they could, God forbid, do something drastic. So in that case also we'll daven and we'll do whatever, cry out to Hashem in whatever way. And we even say the prayer on Shabbat for people who are sick today. In other words, you don't say a general prayer for healing, people who are sick in danger of their lives. You don't say a general prayer for healing, for your cousin who's got a cold. You say your prayer for people who are in a life and death, life-threatening situation. And one thing I was thinking about, and we do that in all the, so then what he says is like this. So that's if somebody's life-threatening, you make a regular mishaberach. But if somebody's not really in a life-threatening situation, you say, Shabbati milizok urfor krovalavo. It's Shabbos, so we're not actually asking Hashem for healing, but we hope that healing will come. So that's what we do in all the shuls. In all the shuls in Shabbos, when you say the prayer for the sick, you're not really saying the prayer for the sick. You're mentioning that they're sick. We don't want to pray because you can't pray unless we're talking about those who are actually, matter of life and death. Okay. Next chapter, 289. The Shabbat Shacharit meal, the Shabbat morning meal. What would we call the Shabbat morning meal?
The bracha.
Well, we have the bracha. The bracha isn't supposed to be a meal. We call it lunch. Now, the truth is, again, because we start our davening late. What time do our shuls start? 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10, right? Shuls all start late. They all finish late. So the meal that you eat, you come home for lunch. But in those days, you start at 6:30. So you're eating by 9 o'clock already, as I said. So they would have that Shabbat Shacharit meal. And then Surah Shlishit is, lunch. So what you should do, he says, is you need to make sure that your house is set up nicely during the day, the same as during the night. It shouldn't be that at night everything's all set up so beautifully and everything's ready and you walk in and it looks like a palace. And during the day it's all crumbs still on the table and you're just using dirty plates from last night. All that kind of, everything's like messed up. That shouldn't be. Everything should be nice and in place. And he speaks about as well that the beds should be made. So the Mishna Brura wants to know, why should the beds be made? If you're making the bed so that it's nice and comfy to climb into Motzei Shabbat, then you shouldn't do it, because you shouldn't prepare on Shabbat for after Shabbat. It must be that he's talking about that you want to making the beds for your Shabbat shlof, or making the beds because you want the house to look neat and tidy on Shabbat. So that's like a general rule when it comes to tidying on Shabbat. You can't tidy on Shabbat so that it's nice for after Shabbat, but you can tidy on Shabbat so that it's nice for Shabbat. So that's the point he makes as well. And as a friend of mine said, you can also tidy on Shabbat if your wife wants it nice for Shabbat, even if you don't care. But it's driving you crazy, so that's also a good justification. So then you make a brocha on the wine. V'yevarech al hayayin borei pri hagafen. You make the brocha on the wine borei pri hagafen. And that is called Kiddush Rabbah. What does Kiddush Rabbah mean? Big Kiddush. So you say borei pri hagafen, and that's big Kiddush. Why is Borei Pri Hagafen called big Kiddush? Sounds like a small Kiddush. So the commentaries say... Sorry? No. I'll come back to that in a second. But it's such a small Kiddush. Why do we call it the big Kiddush? So they say it's a euphemism. We don't want to call it the small Kiddush. It's not nice to call it the little Kiddush. Call it the great Kiddush. In the same way that the Gemara, if I want to speak about somebody who's blind, it says he's Sagi Nahor. He has a lot of light. Does it mean that he has a lot of light? It means that he's blind. Or they talk about sometimes the cemetery, they call it the Beit Chaim, house of life. You don't want to call it Beit Meitim, right, where all the dead people live. So that's a euphemism, the same thing. It's such a little Kiddush. All it is Borei Pri Hagafen. So we don't want to call it the little Kiddush, therefore we call it the big Kiddush. But everyone knows that we mean the little Kiddush. And that Chaz asking, but don't you have to say stuff about Shabbos? The answer is no. In fact, Rabbi Johnny Glass in Joburg. So when he wants to make Kiddush Shabbos day, stands the thing, picks up the wine, he says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. And Rabbi Altman said to me once, he does the same thing. Aaron said that sometimes they sing because it's nice songs, but in principle, borei peri hagafen. The truth is, that's all you have to say. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't even mention Vashamru or Zachor or anything like that. The Mishna Brura says, listen to this. Some people have the custom of first saying Vashamru or Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. What do we all do? Both. That's not recorded in the Mishnah Brura. It'd be interesting to see where that comes from. Maybe that's Rabbi Artskol who made up that minhag. But at Yeshiva, Rabbi Goldfein only did Zachor and then Borei Peri Hagafen. But the shuls that do both doesn't seem to be. Now, what the Mishnah Brura points out, what some people do is they just say, Al-Kain Baruch Hashem et Yom HaShabbat v'Ketshehu, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. What's the problem with that? Starting in the middle of a pasuk. You can't start or stop in the middle of a pasuk. If you're going to say a pasuk, you have to say the whole pasuk. And the whole pasuk is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat, all the way until Al-Kain Baruch Hashem et Yom HaShabbat v'Ketshehu. You want to say a pasuk, you've got to say a whole pasuk. Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun, one of the great rabbis in Israel today, he made the point. He says he doesn't understand. You look in every shul, it's got the 10 commandments above the Aron Kodesh. And where's it got? It's got the first 2 words of each of the commandments. He says, how can you quote half psukim? Who gave them permission to do that? Great question. It's everywhere in the world. Don't know an answer. But here you see that principle coming through, that you're not allowed to have a half a pasuk, all or nothing. So the real thing is to say Borei Peri Hagafen. But it's a custom to also say verses before, whether it's Zachor or Vashamru. Then he says you wash your hands afterwards. We saw this discussion earlier about you wash your hands first, you make Kiddush first. But let's assume you make Kiddush, then wash your hands. And you have Lechem Mishna, double bread, just like at night, and you have your meal. And this Kiddush also needs to be in the place of a meal. And you also are not allowed to eat before this Kiddush, just like when it comes to the night. However, you are allowed to drink water before davening, because you don't yet have to make Kiddush. Before Shacharit, you don't have to make Kiddush yet. We would say you can even drink a cup of coffee, right? But you don't have to make Kiddush yet before, so that's fine. By the way, that's another way to get out of the fast. If people are concerned about the fast, it's going to be a long davening. So have a cup of coffee before you come to shul. Then definitely you're not fasting. Doesn't matter how long the davening is. Okay, and then he continues that if there isn't so much wine around, then you could use, this is what Chad was asking earlier, then you could use beer or other drinks, except for water, that are Chamar Medina, that are the wine of the province. In other words, drinks that are social drinks, not just thirst-quenching drinks. Coke, yeah. So, who said Coke? Coke. So Coke's a whole discussion. Sorry?
Because it's very common.
Yeah, so it's not the question of whether it's common, it's the question of is it a social drink? Is it something that you say, oh, I've got a guest, can I get you a Coke? You know, you would certainly say that with wine. Oh, I've got a guest, would you like a glass of wine? Then we would say that with a cup of tea, you know, oh, your guest, like a cup of tea. Would you say that with Coke? Oh, you're a guest, would you like a Coke? You don't go out for Coke, let's go out for Coke. Yeah, so would we say such things? So Rav Moshe Feinstein says, therefore, since we don't say any of this, Coke is not Chamar Medina. Cold drinks are not Chamar Medina. However, when Chief Rabbi Goldstein taught us this, he said, for the same reasons Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said in his teshuvah of, 40 years ago, nowadays, it does apply. I can tell you, I've gone to business meetings, gone to sit in somebody's office, he says, Rabbi, what can I get you? Coke? Coffee? Whiskey? I say, why not all three? No, I don't. But, that's the Coke is offered in that social context. And I've heard others say the same thing, that there would be. So obviously consult your local Orthodox, but there's good grounds on which to say, right? Diane Goldstein, for example, said that you can make Kiddush on Coke.
Especially if you don't know, maybe the person has a bad history with alcohol or something.
No, that's a good one. Look, grape juice today means that's not so much an issue, right? You can just have grape juice instead of wine, but yeah, absolutely. The next thing is that he says if you don't have wine, then you can use Chama Medina. And if you don't even have Chama Medina, then you can just make Hamotzi straight. But the question is, well, what if you do have wine, but you would prefer the other thing? I do have wine, but I'd prefer actually to have a cup of coffee. So there it seems that could be okay. That seems that it wouldn't be so problematic, and we're going to see more on that a little bit later.
You have the choice. You said you have a choice.
Yeah.
The preference is first wine.
First, well, he first puts wine. What I'm saying is, what if you prefer something else? Then maybe you do. So he's going to come to that in a little while. We'll see that shortly. Okay, 290. On Shabbos, you should make up your 100 brachas with fruit. The idea is you say 100 brachas every day. Now, a lot of those brachas come from the Amidah. Every time you say the Amidah, that's 19 brachas. Except on Shabbos, how many brachas on Shabbos? How many brachas in Shabbos Amidah? 7. So you're 12 short. Right? And even though you'll make up 36 short, even though you'll make up 7 of those with an extra musaf, so you're still 29 short. So you need to make up those extra brachas. So some of it you make up with benching. So you're benching 3 times, so that's 4 brachot each, so that's 12. Sorry? So there's all kinds of, if I can say, tricks, right? All kinds of things that we do to try to make up to it. And one of those is that we have fruits, we have treats, and we have nice smells, so that we get to that. So you, before you go to shul in the morning, you take a nice aftershave or a nice smelling spice or something, you say B'rei Minei V'Samim. Then you go to shul, you come home, before you sit down to lunch, you take it again, you say another B'rei Minei V'Samim. You do that a few times of the course, you get another 3-4 brachot from the spices. You have some treats, over the course of the day, you get another few brachot. So that's the other way that he says. And the Ramah adds in that if you like to have a nap in the afternoon, don't stop napping in the afternoon just because of Shabbos. This is part of Oneg Shabbos as well, to have a nap. However, the Mishnah Brura says, don't spend the whole day napping. You've also got to spend the day learning Torah. After you eat breakfast, there is a time there's learning time. So again, come home at 8:30, you eat from 9 to 10 or 9 to 11, then there's Beit Midrash time in the shul. Everyone comes back at 11, and there you all learn. What do you learn? You learn Nach, you learn Nevi'im, you learn Agadah, so Midrash. The Mishnah Brura says as well, you learn Halacha, quotes the Midrash which says that Moshe Rabbeinu gathered together. So the Mishnah Brura brings the Midrash that Moshe Rabbeinu was told, gather together people, teach them the halacha and all that kind of thing. So you should have these halachic gatherings and all these kinds of things. Everyone gets together, and you're not allowed to make your meal then. So in the community, again, you'll have Beit Midrash time. Everyone knows there's 11 to 1. So you're not allowed to have your meal between 11 and 1. You can go early, you can go later. But 11 to 1, you are expected in shul, for the Beit Midrash time. Then he says, workers and businessmen who are not involved in Torah during the week should learn more Torah on Shabbos. Whereas Talmidei Chachamim, who are learning Torah the whole week, they can take a break a little bit more, have longer lunches, nap a bit, because they learn throughout the week. But still, says the Mishnah Brura, don't go overboard. You still got to make sure that you learn Torah as well. You should either try to come up with new Torah ideas or learn stuff that you haven't learned before. Chapter 291, Sudash Lishit. You should be very careful, says the Shulchan Aruch, to have Sudash Lishit. Even if you're full, you can fulfill it by eating a kabeitza of bread. Mishnah Brura says that ideally you should have a little bit more than a kabeitza. Kabeitza, it's a couple of slices. If you really just can't even eat, then don't cause yourself pain, but you should be wise and don't eat so much at the earlier meals that you're not going to want to eat at Sudash Lishit. Leave a little bit of space.
So is the kibetza quite a few slices of
Matchbox size.
No, that would be maybe a kazai would, but do you have that much for? Do you have a kazai? Is that how much you have a kazai for Pesach? Matzah on Pesach?
If you put it all together.
Yeah.
So one slice.
You want to be safe. You want to be safe for a kabeitza. Chief Rabbi Goldstein said a slice and a half of like regular government bread. Challah maybe is a little bit. You have to work out the dimensions a little bit more. 2 slices of challah would do it. Okay. And then he says, but that's with the bigger sizes. Look, if you want to go with those who say that a kazait is the size of an olive, and a kabeitza is the size of an egg. So that's obviously much less. Okay. Now he says, I just want to make this point. He makes the idea that the Sudah Shlishit is non-negotiable. However, in Chabad, for example, they don't have Sudah Shlishit.
No, the Rambam also brings that where people can be more makel and you can.
Okay, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't, right?
No, you can be makel with Torah.
Yeah, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't. I'm saying the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say that.
Yeah.
So Shulchan Aruch is quite clear. So this is an example where we see that the Shulchan Aruch is not the entirety of Jewish law, even though the Shulchan Aruch is clear on this. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch says it. Most of the things the Shulchan Aruch says we take very seriously, but not everything the Shulchan Aruch says ends up as the final halacha.
If you are allergic to gluten or some other things, so you can't have then what can you have?
So the main thing I think you go with is rye bread, because I don't think rye is gluten in the same way. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you would
So
do.
that counts.
Yes, that counts. Any of the 5 grains: wheat, barley, rye, oats, spelt. What's the time for Sudah Shlishit? Once mincha time arrives, in other words, 6.5 hours onwards. If you had it before, let's say you have a meal at 9, and then you have another meal at 10. And then you don't eat, you haven't fulfilled your Sudah Shlishit. Oh, in fact, the Ramor says, if you didn't eat at night, for whatever reason you didn't eat at night, then you must have 3 meals during the day. Okay. So don't eat. So you do it from mincha time onwards, for kind of the 12:30, or in Cape Town the kind of 1:30 time onwards. Some say you're not allowed to drink water between mincha and Ma'ariv on Shabbos. Why? Because that is when the souls return to Gehenna. Okay? Souls get a get out of jail free card from Gehenna on Shabbos. And they start getting ready to go back close to Ma'ariv time. So you shouldn't drink water then. Not enough of a Kabbalist to answer those questions. Yeah. What the Ramor continues to say, look, it's not really such an issue. Just don't drink waters from the river, but if you're at home, then that's really fine, and certainly other kinds of drinks are okay. So I'm telling you because it's in the Shulchan Aruch, but it doesn't seem to be a problem. The Shulchan Aruch says we dafka do have our Sudah Shlishit during that time, and we drink water. So just if you can avoid drinking water from the river, that seems to be the best thing. If you are eating your lunch and you're eating and it's mincha time, so stop. So you started eating at, let's say, in Cape Town, you started eating at 12. They had the Beit Midrash early that week. You started eating at 12. You went until 2 o'clock. And then you say, hey, look, it's actually mincha time. Stop, bench, start eating again. Stop, bench. And then you've had your first meal and your Sudah Shlishit. Yes, Josh?
You said you shouldn't drink water. Would is it like having a cup of coffee, would that count as
No, yeah, he says other liquids are all fine.
even the coffee?
The coffee has water. Well, I guess that, yeah, well, because you're taking the water to make it. Yeah, I guess that we would be, but only water from the river. So you want to make coffee with the water from the river, maybe that's a problem. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. Okay. And then he says, if you know that you can eat a proper Sudah Shlishit after you've done mincha with the community, then it's better to do Sudah Shlishit after mincha rather than before mincha. Do you make kiddush at Sudah Shlishit? No. Do you have 2 challahs? Yes. What if you've only got 1 challah? Then that is fine, but it's mitzvah min hamuvchar. Yesh lahachmir likach shnaim. You should go strict and make sure that you have 2. But if you don't have 2, then that's still all right.